How's it going, guys? I got a fabulous question here from Michael Fugit, who says, thanks for this great video. I have the 50 and the 18 to 135. I also love how versatile the 18 to 135 is and use it all the time. I do as well. I'm not a big fan of how it does in low light situations though. How does the Sigma 18 to 135, which we've got right here, and the Canon 10 to 18, which I'm filming on right now, how does that do on the 80D in low light compared to the 18 to 135? Wow, that is a fabulous question. So basically it sounds like your question is asking about the apertures of these different lenses, but as you all know, apertures are not always constant, so like an f4 on this lens may not be the same as an f4 on this lens. That's why with cinema lenses we use t-stops, because that's the actual calculation of the amount of light reaching the sensor, whereas the aperture, it can change. It's not always going to have the same amount of light hitting the sensor. So that's why this is a great question for a real world video test. We're going to be comparing these four lenses with the 80D to see which one is the best in low light. Just for a quick rundown of the apertures, because that does have a big impact on the low light capabilities of the lenses. I got the 50 1.4 right here. This is the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8. This still remains to be one of my favorite lenses for the 80D. And then you talked about the super versatile 18 to 135. This does have a varying aperture of 3.5 to 5.6. And then for the 10 to 18, which you're actually looking through right now, it's got a variable aperture as well of 4.5 to 5.6. Let's get out and do a real world test. Alright, so here we got the 10 to 18. We're currently at f4.5 and ISO 100. We're going to start bumping up the ISO a little bit so we can see more of what's going on here and finally get focus. This right here is ISO 1000 and we're in a pretty dark environment at the moment. If we zoom into f5.6, you can still see things are looking pretty clean. Alright, so I just turned off the overhead lights here, so we're only using the backlighting. Here we go at 2000. Things are looking good. Wow, I think this is, I'm going to have to dim the backlights a little bit too. Here's 5000. Right there is 6400. We're at f4.5 on the 10 to 18, and I would say in most of my shooting, I really try not to go past 6400 because you're really going to start losing a lot of the details, especially in the shadows. 6400 is about kind of my limit with the 80D. Alright, so once again we got the overhead lights on. We are now with the 18 to 135. We're actually at f4.5 right now. Let's go down to f3.5. That already makes it a little bit better. We're at ISO 100. Let's bump it up a little bit to ISO 500. Right there, 500. Things are looking very, very nice. We can zoom in to f5. Things are looking good. Let's bump up the ISO a little bit. ISO 1000. Things are looking very nice. We got nice depth of field, as you can tell right there. I don't think we even need to bump it up even more. You can already tell. Images are very clean. This is a very dark environment, as you can probably tell. Let me turn off the overhead lights now. We got ISO 1000, ISO 2000, and ISO 6400. I'm going to have to stop down the aperture a little bit. So right here we're at f5.6 at 6400 ISO. As you can tell, there's a little bit of graininess in the shadows, but if we go down to f3.5, maybe even go down to ISO 2500, you know, that's a very, very usable image. Very clean. In terms of a comparison between the 10 to 18, which is that guy right there, and this, the 18 to 135, I definitely say, you know, the 18 to 135 definitely has a lower aperture, so you're able to see more when it's wider, but still the 10 to 18 really holds its own very well. Alright, so here we got the 51.4. We're currently at 3.5 at ISO 100, so let's go down to f1.4. Beautiful. Already we're at ISO 100 f1.4 in this very dark environment, and things are already looking really, really nice. So I just turned the overhead lights off and we're at ISO 250. That's right, ISO 250 f1.4, and this is like a properly exposed image right now. Can you believe that? So with these wider apertures, you don't have to rely on the ISO that much. And you're still getting just a fabulous, fabulous image. Finally, here we got the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8. This still remains to be my favorite lens for the 80D. It's just such an amazing lens. As I zoom in, there is literally zero kind of changing in aperture, which the camera does really well in body to change that with the variable aperture lenses, but there's nothing quite like being able to zoom in and not see any aperture change at all. Let's bump up the ISO to 200. That's all you need. ISO 200 with this guy in this nice and dark environment. Here we're at ISO 400 at f1.8, and let me tell you, there is zero noise in this image whatsoever. I actually don't really hear people talk about native ISO really that much at all, but basically that's just kind of like the ISO that the camera is kind of best at. And oftentimes it's either 200 or 400, or it could even be 600 ISO, where you kind of want to have the camera to be in that range, so you don't actually always want to be at ISO 100 or ISO 50, if you can even do that. Sometimes you want it to just have a little bit higher than your base ISO. But man, this 18-35, if you don't have this lens, you need to get it right now. Alright, so this is actually a comparison I've wanted to do for a very long time, and the results are kind of what I expected. Since the 50 1.4 and the Sigma 18-35 1.8 have very low apertures, they're going to produce very, very clean images. Now, even though the 10-18 and the 18-135 do have varying apertures, what I've found personally is it doesn't really make that big of a deal, because the camera does a super good job at just making that change in aperture work really smoothly. Now, since these two lenses cannot open up their aperture quite as far, that means you're going to be pushing the ISO sooner, but the 80D does do surprisingly well for an APS-C size sensor in low light capabilities. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So I hope this video was helpful in comparing which lens you should pick up for your 80D. The links to all these guys and all the gear that I use is all down below. Final thing, we did not talk about the price. Generally with variable aperture lenses, they're a little less expensive because these are kind of like the kit lenses. I still use them because they're so versatile. If you're shooting something where you need to be zoomed in and zoomed out in a matter of a couple seconds, you don't have time to change lenses, these guys are the best. With that said, you're not going to get quite as crisp of an image, and when you get into prime lenses, they can get really, really expensive. You really gotta weigh how much you want to spend with this new lens over if you really need that extra image quality. That's all I've got. Thank you for watching, and as always, don't forget to keep it pro.